Okay, I think we'll get a move on. And I'd like to welcome David Thowson, Managing Director of Mincor Resources. David joined Mincor on the 1st of February 2019 as Managing Director. He's a certified practicing accountant with more than 30 years' experience in accounting, operations, capital markets and finances across the resources and industrial sectors. David's been intimately involved in several large project financings in multiple jurisdictions and has completed significant capital market M&A transaction and negotiated multi-million dollar sales offtake agreements in various commodities and has substantial experience in listed and private company boards. David has a significant experience in battery metals through his non-executive director role at Kidman Resources, which was acquired by Wesfarmers, and through a decade in the nickel industry. Prior to joining Mincor, David was Executive Director of ASX 200 Nickel Company Western Areas and has held senior executive roles with Brambles, ANZ Investment Bank, Western Mining Resources. David is currently Non-Executive Director of Ramelius Resources and is a council member and chair of the Audit Committee and Risk Committee of Curtin University. Welcome along, David.
Great. Thank you. What a wonderful opportunity to present the morning slot, day one of Diggers, and a big thank you to the organisers for providing this opportunity to us. It's also nice to see, we can all get a little bit bored of hearing gold, 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 more gold. Well, nickel is the new gold. We're the happy metal, we're the metal of the future, we're the metal that shows the world's actually becoming a better place. But I must admit, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. You feel a little bit like Johnny Farnham coming in following Paul McCartney, Elton John, Mick Jagger and Cher. Now, I won't tell you who, you can make up your own mind who Cher is, but I think it's Rowley. But let me say, for what we lack in size compared to a 16 billion, probably 17 billion today, we hope to make up for in investment leverage. And so with that, I want to talk a little bit about the last 12 months and where we've come from. Last year at Diggers, and Miles again was very kind to us, we were a last minute ring in. There was the takeover of Mod Resources by Sandfire. We were day three for 15 minutes. At that time, we'd just penned an initial agreement with BHP Nickel West, but we had no DFS, we had no ore reserves, we were still drilling out early stage in our discovery at Cassini. Our market capitalisation was somewhere around $100 million. But we had a plan. Today, we have completed a DFS. We have an ore reserve at Cassini and across the group, and we've upgraded that already once. We have $101 million in the bank, the $55 million project finance facility. We're fully permitted and development is underway. And our market cap is now roughly undervalued at 4 times higher. So we think it's going to go a lot higher over the next few years, our market cap. And the fact that we're at the forefront of what we call the third wave for mining of nickel in Kambalda. So in my presentation, I'm actually going to focus on our commencement. I'm going to leave a little bit of the EV discussion aside. I think there's some other presenters who will talk about the nickel market, talk about Elon Musk, talk about nickel demand, battery chemistries and other things. However, you might, and in fact the Premier mentioned it earlier, you might have read recent media speculation that BHP Nickel West may be in discussions with Tesla. Now I don't know whether that's true, but for those who plan to buy Tesla in the future, what that means that if you support Mincor, and Mincor is in operations and we are selling our product through BHP, there'll be a little bit of Mincor in everyone's Tesla. So please look forward to that, and Stu, you can upgrade your Tesla from a few years ago. So, what do I mean by the third wave? If you go back in history, you have a look 1967 to the 1970s, that's when nickel first got on the map in Kalgoorlie and Kambalda. For the record, in 1967, I was actually an unborn thought somewhere in a New Zealand farm with a lot of sheep. But as we sit here today, We then look at 1990 to 2007, and we had Western Mining, and they ultimately built up a number of nickel mines, divested it out to companies like Mincor and Independence Group and Panoramic, and generated a new tier of mid-tier nickel miner. And today, we sit here in 2020, and Mincor's made the first discovery in 20 years, and over 20 years actually, within Kambalda, and that's Cassini. And it's not to be confused with the other Cassini that was recently taken over by Oz Minerals. That's bad Cassini. Good Cassini is the one south of Widgie-Multa, and it's about our deposit. And what you can see there is an image of our box cut. Now, why on earth have I put this up? Well, I thought, normally Rowley has a bit of a sense of humour and does, lookalikes. And I've had a lot of feedback from people like Paul Armstrong of Reed Corporate telling me that I'm a doppelganger for Premier Andrews. I don't actually see it myself, other than the blue suit, blue shirt, thick glasses, slightly greying hair. My ears aren't quite as big as his, but hopefully we will mine a lot better than Premier Andrews in the future. So then, turning forward, looking at what we're going to be doing. We've got a plan to be in production towards 2021 and coming into 2022. We've moved from being shovel ready to actually operating the shovel. Now, we've done that with some very supportive shareholders. Our two largest shareholders, Wyloo Metals, and for those who don't know Wyloo, they're part of the Tatarang Group, which is ultimately part of Andrew Forrest's Minderoo Group. And they've bought shares on market, and as a managing director, there's nothing like people buying your shares on market. And also IGO Limited, who hold 8% of us. So our strategy is actually quite simple. It's around the 4 Ds. It's about discovery, and we've done that with Cassini. It's about development, and we are in the middle of development. We've delivered a DFS. We've delivered on every promise that we've made over the 18 months, and we'll do it diligently. And that's about in the communities that we operate, making sure we meet our promises. But this is a cycle that keeps on continuing, and we may be on the cusp of another major discovery at Cassini, which we recently announced. So then going down towards the countdown, towards us delivering our operation. We've had a number of milestones in no particular order, from the ore tolling and concentrate purchase agreement with BHP, to the DFS, which I'll cover again shortly, to a mining contract that we've executed and is now commissioning. We've completed 2 very successful equity raises, and we recently had approved a project financing facility for $55 million, which I'll touch upon. So really, we're on the go. So when you think about location, and it's all about location, we're up in the northern part of Kambalda, but we're also in the southern part of the Widgie-Multa Dome, which we loosely bring together as the Kambalda province. We are right next to infrastructure, so we're right next to the water pipeline, to power lines, which we've recently cut an agreement with BHP. We're right next door to rail. We're also probably, for those who play golf, we're a driver and a 6-iron away from the Kambalda concentrator, where our Kambalda operations are. So using a few words that Bill and Rowley dropped a few times, we're in a Tier 1 jurisdiction. We're high grade, high margin, very low capital intensity. So turning to Cassini, which is our flagship operation, what you can see there is inside the box cut, 2 very happy people sitting there. And if you're a geotech engineer, what I'm told is this is a geotech rock dream. It's very stable, will probably require very little support work. It's as more competent ground that you'll ever come across. So we're particularly happy about that. And you can see a portal location on the left there, which we're hoping to fire within the next month. What we will do, though, is we'll be doing some underground drilling, which I'll talk about very shortly. We've got reserves there of just over 40,000 tonnes of nickel. It converts very nicely from resource to reserve. The actual cash cost of operating Cassini as an operation is around $2.70 Aussie per pound. If you have a look at today's nickel price, it's around $10 per pound. So Cassini, we think, is potentially an emerging nickel camp. And if you have a look at the history of Kambalda nickel-style deposits, you generally do find them in clusters. This was actually blind and undercover. The first intersections were in the hanging wall, was a sniff of nickel, but you want it on contact. But what it encouraged our geologists to do was to drill and explore further. So at this point, I should pay the compliments to the geological team of Rob, Costa and Mark, but also to the prior Managing Director, Peter Michelli, in making this amazing discovery on a shoestring budget, and as I said, the first one in over 20 years within Kambalda. What we'll be doing there is drilling from underground. We can't continue to drill it from surface, and that's typical of Kambalda nickel deposits. Then Cassini North. We had a theory 12 months ago. We were talking about Cassini North, that we think there is a potential for a repeat structure. And after doing some remodelling of the basalt, we put a hole down and we called it our discovery hole, where we hit 2.5 metres at 6.6% nickel. And that also happens to be the true width. What that tells us, we hit that on contact. But like the Cassini main deposit, we first of all had sniffs in the hanging wall. And we followed up the hanging wall and we ultimately got this intersection. We've got the money to be able to drill this and other deposits or other potential deposits whilst developing our operations. The core looks exceptional. It's only 250 metres in vertical depth, but most importantly, it's right adjacent to the Cassini main infrastructure that we'll be putting in place. This is one of my favourite slides. It's because I'm not a geologist, and geologists do tend to get a little bit afraid of the JORC code. This is my way of explaining of how big Cassini could possibly be. And if you look at the small bubbles on the left, they are historical Kambalda deposits that have grown into significant deposits. The main one being Otter Juan, and that's grown to over 317,000 tonnes from 17,000 tonnes. And then when you look at Cassini, what could that potentially be? And we haven't even started mining it yet, and we haven't started drilling it underground, but typically everything grows 2 or 3 times. Now this, on the theme of, we heard about the Golden Mile in Kalgoorlie. Well, there's a Golden Mile in Kambalda as well for nickel. And for the first time, we're able to consolidate the Kambalda space. So a lot of similarities, albeit on different scale. But this is where the most nickel in Australia has come out of. On the left-hand side, there used to be separate owners. There was what I fondly term North Korea, which was IGO. And on the other side was South Korea, which was Mincor. And there was a demilitarised zone in the middle where nobody got to explore. Now that we've purchased along operations, we're going to connect these ore bodies and we're going to explore in between 1.1 kilometres, not where a single drill hole has come out, and yet there's 1 million tonnes of nickel that's come out of that space. In terms of a little bit of detail here on the DFS, I won't go into all these numbers. That's a plan of Cassini. This is only our starter operation though at 5 years. We've got plans to be going a hell of a lot longer than 5 years, and when you look at that bubble chart you can see why. But as far as a starter project is, we pay our capital back in 12 months. We generate very healthy cash flows. You have a very strong IRR, and we don't have to build a mill. We do all of this to have a 16,000 tonne of nickel operation. We do all of this for a capex of about $70 million. So it's very cheap. We've also gone through the funding process, and what this, I think, demonstrates, the deal that we were able to generate with BNP and SocGen, is that our credit is of high quality. This has meant that we've been able to negotiate a $55 million facility and an interest rate not that much greater than the mortgage rates. Not that Saracen and Northern Star would know much about mergers after their combination in the future. But for us mere mortals in nickel, who have to work really hard for our living and eke it out, at 3.7%, we're pretty excited by that deal. And it does show the quality of the credit, but also as a message to people looking for financing, you've got to make sure ESG is right at the top of your mind. We also had to go through ESG approval separate to credit approval, and that was signed off. Now, we have a processing agreement with our friends at BHP Nickel West. We use their Kambalda nickel concentrator, and we produce a nickel concentrate which feeds into their system. That concentrator has capacity well over 1 million tonnes. We've signed up to 600,000 tonnes. There's a fairly clear understanding that if there's more ore to put through, we'll have capacity there. And that concentrator is designed for our style of concentrate. And so what I want to leave you with is a message of our strategic importance to BHP. Our concentrate is of high quality. It fits within the BHP system. It still relies on third-party feed, and we will be one of the key suppliers. And all of our tenements also happen to be right adjacent to BHP's. Also want to talk very quickly around our core values. Our core values are up there to see. I won't go through them. The image that you can see on there is the light electric vehicle, the Bortana, that we've tested many times, and so I think it's pretty neat. You're going to have a high nickel content light vehicle helping extract nickel for the battery industry in the future. But a few key things in there: our mining contractor pit and portal, local, which is very important to us, that we have as much local content as we possibly can, experienced Kambalda underground miners, and we're very humbled by the amount of people applying for jobs. And whilst I'm up here, if you are looking for a job, if you want to be involved in a small company and be nimble and be able to make a difference and to be able to operate on a brand new mine, please come and see us. We do actually have quite a bit of fun. But also our LTIFR, whilst being a backward looking metric, we're sitting at 0 and we plan to keep it there. So some key milestones going forward. These are in no particular order, but what you'll see is a signing of the financing facility agreement. We'll drill that golden mile in between Long and Durkin. The Kambalda nickel concentrator will be set up and be manned up within BHP. So we're really looking to get Kambalda going. We talk about Karratha, we talk about Kalgoorlie. We want to be the kings of Kambalda. We're going to be employing well over 200 staff, and that's when we can also look at community support programs. So finally, the final word, the messages that I'd like to leave with you is I'm not going to use tier 1, I'm going to use the words a premier location. We've got rare high grades, which nickel is very hard to find. You look at any research about batteries in the future, and they're saying, where is the nickel going to come from? Where is class 1 nickel? There's plenty of nickel pig iron, there's lots of laterite, but not a lot of nickel sulfides. We're fully funded. Our strategy is very simple. We've got a tier 1 partner, and we think we're in the right timing. And as a final note, as some people may know, I am a New Zealander and an Australian at the same time, so I have very much appreciated the feedback that the Wallabies managed to draw with the All Blacks. It has been most welcome, and what people will remember last time is that when the Wallabies beat the All Blacks, they got completely walloped the second time around. So celebrate your draw, and if you'd like to have a bet with me about the next game of rugby, I'm all ears. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, David. We do have time just for one quick question out there from the floor. We do have, was that a hand at the back? No, we do have a question that was, congratulations on where you've taken Mincor in the last year, 100 million cap to 385 odd million, that's excellent and great business in front of you. But I've now got a question that comes from elsewhere which says, how does Mincor incorporate processing issues of the nickel ore into the valuation of deposits? That's from Ivan Heron.
Okay, so essentially we send the ore to Kambalda, to the nickel concentrator that BHP run. There's certain agreements between BHP and Mincor that govern how that ore is processed, but it's typical Kambalda style ore that's already been tested by BHP and follows the history of the last 20 years. So we pay BHP a processing charge, which is almost a similar charge as if we were an owner of the infrastructure. BHP take care of the tailings, and then we sell them the nickel concentrate as it comes out the pipe.
Thank you, David. Last opportunity for a question from the floor. Well, David, on behalf of everyone, thank you for coming along today and making the presentation. Much appreciated, and congratulations.